Welcome to Outbreak Brief, the podcast that takes you inside the world's most dangerous infections. Picture a hidden, thread-like villain that just silently hijacks the human body's drainage system. We're talking about a pathogen that lies perfectly dormant inside children for years, only to, manifest into this monstrous, completely irreversible swelling when they reach adulthood. You are dealing with an adversary that plays a really long, incredibly cruel game.
It really is. It's a biological horror story. And to really grasp the sheer scale of it, we kind of have to look at the numbers right off the bat.
Right.
We are talking about a threat that currently looms over about 657 million people worldwide.
Which is just a massive portion of the globe.
Exactly. But what makes this pathogen truly terrifying isn't just its reach, it is its intelligence. Or, more accurately, it's evolutionary synchronization.
Yeah. And when I was looking through the research you shared for this deep dive, there was this one specific detail about how this parasite operates that genuinely, it gave me chills.
Oh, the timing.
Yes. It has an internal clock.
It does. It is a phenomenon known as nocturnal periodicity.
Nocturnal periodicity.
Yeah. So if you are infected, your days might seem completely normal, right? You
Sure.
feel fine. But imagine it's 10 p.m., you're asleep. Deep inside your lymphatic tissues, millions of these microscopic worms are literally waking up.
Oh, my God.
Between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., they swarm out of the deep tissue and just flood directly into your peripheral bloodstream.
Meaning, like, the blood vessels right at the surface.
Exactly. The vessels just beneath your skin. And they do this every single night on a strict schedule.
Wait. How does a microscopic worm living deep inside my internal organs know what time it is outside?
Well, they are responding to subtle physiological cues in the human body. So changes in your body temperature, your oxygen levels, your heart rate as you go into deep sleep.
That's wild.
Right, but the why is the really sinister part. They migrate to the surface of your skin at exactly the same time that their preferred vectors are hunting.
The mosquitoes.
Yeah, they're literally waiting in your surface veins for the mosquitoes to arrive.
It is like a coordinated, totally sinister prison break that only happens under the cover of darkness. The inmates know exactly when the getaway vehicles are going to be idling outside the gates, so they time their escape perfectly.
That's a really good way to put it, actually.
But, to fight an enemy this synchronized, we first have to understand exactly what kind of monster we're dealing with here. What is this pathogen?
So the biological villain here is a parasitic infection known as lymphatic filariasis.
Lymphatic filariasis.
Right, and it's caused by these thread-like nematodes, which are roundworms in the family Filariodidae. There are 3 main culprits globally, but one specific worm called Wuchereria bancrofti is responsible for about 90% of all cases.
Okay, 90%. And the others?
The backup players are Brugia malay and Brugia timori, mainly in parts of Asia.
Now, calling them worms almost feels like we're underplaying the damage they do. Let's not think of them as simple earthworms in the garden. When I read the dimensions on these things, I was genuinely shocked.
Oh yeah, they are not small. The adult worms can measure up to 10 centimeters long.
10 centimeters?
Yeah, that's nearly 4 inches of this thread-like parasite living inside you. And they don't just pass through your system like a stomach bug.
Well,
they migrate to your lymphatic vessels, and they set up camp for 6 to 8 years.
6 to 8 years, wow.
And during that entire time, they are mating and pumping out millions of immature larvae, which are called microfilaria, directly into your blood.
So they're basically like long-term, highly destructive squatters. They move into the plumbing in your house, your lymphatic system, and they slowly destroy the walls from the inside out over nearly a decade.
Yeah, it's like plumbing, but honestly, it's worse. Because, if a pipe bursts in your house, the water doesn't actively invite a secondary bacterial infection that rots the foundation.
Right. Good point.
Your lymphatic vessels are so crucial. They act as the body's waste management and fluid recycling system. They pull excess fluid out of your tissues and return it to your blood.
So they keep you from puffing up like a balloon.
Exactly. But they also serve as the main highway for your immune defense. So when you have a nest of 4-inch worms tangled up inside those delicate vessels, the flow of lymph just completely stops.
The plumbing backs up.
Right. Fluid begins to severely pool in your tissues. And worse, your local immune defenses in that limb are completely blocked. So it leaves the tissue totally defenseless against, just everyday bacteria and fungi on your skin.
Man, if these squatters have been crippling human immune systems and causing this kind of physical damage for so long, the economic toll must be staggering.
Historically, it has been totally devastating. I mean, before massive interventions began, this disease caused an estimated $1 billion in annual economic losses across endemic tropical regions.
$1 billion
Yeah.
every year.
Every single year. It has long been recognized by the World Health Organization as one of the leading causes of global permanent disability.
Which brings up a massive question for me. If this disease has been crippling millions of people and economies for centuries, why did it take until the year 2000 to launch a coordinated global elimination program?
Well, because before the year 2000, we were kind of fighting in the dark. We simply didn't have the diagnostic or pharmacological tools to fight it on a population level.
What do you mean by diagnostic tools?
Well, think about the nocturnal periodicity we talked about. If you wanted to diagnose someone back then, you literally had to wake them up at midnight to draw their blood.
Oh, just to catch that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. swarming window.
Exactly. And you cannot do that for hundreds of millions of people in remote villages. It's logistically impossible.
Yeah, I guess waking up an entire village at 1 in the morning to draw blood isn't going to fly.
Not at all. And furthermore, we didn't have the massive, reliable pharmaceutical donations required to treat entire countries. So the launch of the WHO's global program to eliminate lymphatic filariasis in 2000, that was a watershed moment.
That's when things finally shifted.
Right. Rapid field diagnostics were developed, billions of pills were donated, and global political will finally aligned.
But to understand why eradication is such a monumental logistical nightmare, we have to look at the exact mechanics of how it sneaks from person to person. Because a 4-inch worm doesn't just crawl from my lymph node to yours.
No. It relies entirely on a vector-borne transmission cycle. And the terrifying thing is that this parasite is incredibly versatile. It is transmitted by several different genera of mosquitoes.
So it's not just one specific type of mosquito.
No, in urban slums, it hitches a ride on Culex mosquitoes. In rural agricultural zones, it uses Anopheles. And in swampy or island regions, it uses Aedes or Mansonia.
So it literally doesn't matter what environment you live in. The parasite has evolved to exploit whatever mosquito happens to live in your neighborhood.
Precisely. When an infected mosquito takes a blood meal from a human at night, it ingests those microscopic microfilariae swarming in the blood.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through the life cycle and the research, this isn't a simple transfer. Like, the mosquito isn't just a flying syringe moving infected blood from person A to person B. The mosquito is an absolute biological necessity.
It is an incubator.
Right.
If you take a syringe of infected blood and inject it into a healthy person, they will not get lymphatic filariasis.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The parasite must pass through the mosquito to mature. Once ingested, those microscopic larvae migrate from the mosquito's stomach, its midgut, into its thoracic flight muscles.
So they live in the mosquito's chest muscles.
Yes. And over the next 1 to 2 weeks, they feed and develop into infectious third-stage larvae. Only then do they migrate up to the mosquito's proboscis, its mouthparts.
Wow. It's a whole journey.
It really is. And when that mosquito bites a new human, the larvae aren't injected like venom. They are deposited right onto the surface of the skin.
Just left on the surface.
Yeah, but they actively sense the heat and moisture of the bite wound, crawl inside, and navigate their way deep into the human lymphatics to grow into adult worms.
That is haunting.
Oh.
So since mosquito bites are a daily, inescapable reality in these tropical zones, who actually ends up carrying the heaviest burden of this infection?
Well, geographically, the disease is currently endemic in 39 countries, spanning sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Western Pacific.
Okay.
And nearly 2/3 of all affected patients actually live in Asia. It tends to be slightly more common in men than women, probably due to occupational exposure outdoors. But the demographic reality, the true tragedy of this disease, is the timeline. This is fundamentally a childhood trap.
And this is where the emotional and socioeconomic weight of the disease just crushes you. Because when we look at the data, nearly 1/3 of children in these endemic areas might be infected before they even reach age 5.
But you wouldn't know it. The infection remains completely asymptomatic on the outside until well after puberty.
So you have a child who gets bitten at age 4. The worms move into their lymphatic system and start quietly destroying the plumbing. But the severe, life-altering physical disabilities won't physically manifest until they are in their 20s.
Exactly.
Right when they were trying to start a career, right when they were trying to start a family or, contribute to their community. Suddenly their limbs swell massively. They can't walk, they can't work, and they are hit with extreme social stigma and pushed right into crushing poverty.
Yeah, the disease progression is essentially a ticking time bomb, and it happens in 3 distinct phases.
Trace that physical progression for us. What exactly is happening inside the body when those silent childhood infections finally wake up?
Okay, so phase 1 is the asymptomatic phase. As we mentioned, there are no outward signs. But internally, the parasite is causing hidden damage to the lymphatics and the kidneys.
Even though you feel fine.
Right. Then phase 2 is the acute phase, known as adenolemphangitis. This is characterized by sudden, incredibly painful swelling of the lymph nodes. Patients suffer high fevers, and the skin over the affected area becomes severely inflamed and literally begins to exfoliate or peel away.
That sounds agonizing.
It is. And in some regions, patients experience tropical pulmonary eosinophilia, which is a severe asthmatic coughing and wheezing because the host's immune system is actually attacking microfilaria that are getting trapped in the microscopic air sacs of the lungs.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because when I was looking at the immunology of this acute phase in the deep dive sources, I noticed something wild. Much of this violent inflammation isn't just from the worms themselves. It is from something living inside the worms.
Oh, yes. That is one of the most fascinating biological layers to this pathogen. You were talking about Wolbachia.
Wolbachia.
Right, it's an endosymbiotic bacteria. It lives inside the filarial worms, and the parasite actually needs this bacteria to survive and reproduce. They are entirely dependent on each other.
Like a partnership.
Exactly. But when the adult worms die in your body, whether they die of old age after 6 years or because a doctor gives you medication, they rupture. And when they rupture, they spill massive amounts of Wolbachia bacteria directly into your lymphatic system.
Oh.
So your immune system detects this massive bacterial dump and triggers an explosive, severe inflammatory response.
And all of that chronic inflammation, all of that scarring in the lymphatic vessels over the years, that leads to the final stage. The chronic phase.
Yes, this is the visible horror most people associate with the disease. The lymphatic system just completely fails. Fluid pools irreparably in the extremities, causing lymphedema and elephantiasis.
And that's the massive swelling of the legs.
Right. The limbs become grossly swollen, and because the local immune system is basically dead at that point, secondary bacterial infections just run rampant. This turns the skin hyperkeratotic.
Explain what hyperkeratotic actually means for the patient experiencing it. Like, what does that feel like?
Well, the skin reacts to the constant inflammation and infection by thickening incredibly fast. It becomes brawny, non-pitting.
Non-pitting.
Meaning if you press your finger into the swelling, it doesn't leave an indent because it is solid tissue, not just water. The skin turns into thick, hardened, scaly folds that resemble tree bark or elephant skin.
God, that is awful.
And in men, this lymphatic blockage often causes hydrocele, which is a massive, debilitating swelling of the scrotum. And internally, the pressure can even cause lymphatic vessels in the abdomen to rupture into the kidneys.
Wait, into the kidneys.
Yeah. This causes chyluria, where intestinal lymph, so the fatty fluid absorbed from your food mixes directly into your urinary tract. So patients are literally urinating milky white fluid.
With symptoms this severe, and a lymphatic system clogged with dying worms, massive swelling, and bacterial storms, how do doctors even begin to diagnose and treat someone today?
Well, as we touched on, diagnosis used to be a nightmare of midnight blood draws. But today, for Wucheria bancrofti, we rely on daytime antigen tests.
Oh, so much easier.
Very much so. These are rapid tests, similar to a pregnancy test or a rapid COVID test, that detect specific proteins left off by the adult worms at any hour of the day. But for visualizing the damage, doctors use ultrasound.
I have to admit, when I read about the ultrasound findings, I felt this visceral, skin-crawling horror. It is called the filarial dance.
Yes, the filarial dance.
Doctors place an ultrasound probe against the patient's swollen skin, and on the monitor, they don't just see blocked vessels. They can actually see the living adult worms wiggling and twisting in a frantic dance inside the patient's body. It is the ultimate thriller movie trope, where you realize the monster is moving right beneath the floorboards of your own house.
It is incredibly unsettling to watch. But, for a physician, it provides immediate confirmation of an active, living adult worm infection. And once confirmed, treatment is a multi-step process.
Walk us through that.
First, we use antiparasitic therapies. Drugs like dichlorcarbamazine, which is known as DEC, ivermectin, and albendazole. These drugs rapidly clear the microscopic larvae from the blood, preventing the patient from infecting any more mosquitoes.
Okay, so that stops the spread.
Right. But to kill the adult worms, doctors cleverly prescribe the antibiotic doxycycline
Wait, an antibiotic? Why use an antibiotic against a parasitic worm?
to target the Wolbachia.
Oh, the bacteria inside the worm.
Exactly. By killing the bacteria living inside the worm, you essentially sterilize the adult worms and slowly starve them to death without causing a sudden, massive inflammatory rupture.
That is brilliant.
It is. Now, for the chronic damage, surgical options exist to drain and repair hydrocele in men, but severe elephantiasis in the limbs is largely irreversible.
So what do you do for those patients?
Treatment shifts entirely to intense hygiene, washing the deep folds of the skin daily, and using compression therapy to prevent those secondary bacterial infections that cause the skin to harden in the first place.
But there is a massive, deadly caveat to giving these anti-parasitic drugs, isn't there? In some parts of the world, a doctor prescribing these standard pills is walking into a medical minefield.
A literal life or death minefield. In regions of Central and West Africa, doctors are required to test for co-infections before they ever hand a patient a pill. If a patient with lymphatic filariasis happens to also be infected with loa loa, which is the African eyeworm, giving them DEC or ivermectin is catastrophic.
Walk us through the mechanism there. Why is it so dangerous?
So if you have a high burden of loa loa parasites in your blood and you take these drugs, it triggers an instantaneous massive die-off of the loa loa microfilaria.
Just a total system shock.
Exactly. Millions of dead and dying microscopic worms suddenly clog the microvasculature, the tiny capillary blood vessels in the brain.
Oh, no.
Yeah, this causes fatal encephalopathy. The brain swells massively, leading to coma and very often death within days.
So treating individuals safely is fraught with immense risk and requires, heavy screening. If individual treatment requires this level of careful, specialized navigation, how on earth do we protect entire populations at once? I mean, standard logic says we need a vaccine.
And that is the glaring void at the center of this global fight. There is absolutely no vaccine available for lymphatic filariasis.
And from what I understand from our sources, the reason why we don't have a vaccine is deeply tied to how this specific parasite actively hijacks the human immune system.
Exactly. A vaccine relies on teaching your immune system to remember a pathogen and attack it. But these worms are master manipulators. Early on, when the larvae first enter, your body throws everything at them. You mount a massive immune response. Your T helper 2 cells spike, and specific antibodies like IgE and IgG4 just flood the system.
Which is what you want.
Right. But as the infection becomes chronic and the adult worms settle in, they release molecules that basically turn off the body's alarms. They induce immune downregulation.
They just swish it off.
They do. They convince your immune system to tolerate them, allowing them to live peacefully in your vessels for a decade. Because they actively suppress your immune response, a standard vaccine simply wouldn't work. The worms would just turn off the vaccine-induced response too.
So if we can't vaccinate the population, what is the strategy?
The medical community relies on a strategy called mass drug administration, or MDA. This involves giving annual single-dose regimens of antiparasitic medicines to the entire at-risk population in an endemic area. We aren't just treating the sick, we are giving the drugs to everyone.
So wait, instead of a traditional vaccine, we're essentially medicating millions of perfectly healthy people simultaneously, year after year, just to ensure that when the mosquitoes bite them, they draw a blank. The logistics of that alone sound impossible. How do you fund, distribute, and track a pharmacological assault on that scale?
It requires an unprecedented coalition. You have governments, the WHO, and pharmaceutical companies who donate billions of dollars worth of these drugs entirely for free.
Wow.
The goal is to clear the microfilaria from the blood of all the asymptomatic carriers in a region. If the mosquitoes have no larvae to drink, transmission stops.
But pharmacology alone can't be enough, right? If we're carpeting these regions with pills, we have to be backing it up with environmental controls.
Yes. The WHO strategy relies on a strict two-pronged approach. Prong 1 is interrupting transmission. That means pairing the mass drug administration with intense vector control. We are talking about indoor residual spraying to kill mosquitoes on walls and the widespread distribution of insecticide-treated bed nets.
And I want to highlight the dual purpose of those bed nets. We often think of a mosquito net as just a physical shield protecting a sleeping human. But in this fight, because the parasite relies on that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. window we talked about earlier, a chemically treated bed net is an active weapon.
Absolutely.
It's designed to attract, intercept and kill the mosquito, thereby starving the parasites of their transmission network. By killing the mosquito, you break the cycle for the whole village.
That is a crucial distinction. And prong two is what the WHO calls the essential package of care for morbidity management.
Taking care of the people already hurt.
Right. We cannot forget the millions who already have irreversible damage. MDA stops the spread, but it doesn't cure elephantiasis. Morbidity management involves treating the painful acute attacks, performing millions of hydrocele surgeries, and deeply educating patients on the skin hygiene needed to survive with compromised limbs.
So we have over 2 decades of this massive global drug program and vector control. We are trying to outsmart a parasite that has evolved for millennia to perfectly exploit our biology. Is a brute force approach like this actually working? What does the scorecard look like today?
The scale of the progress is staggering. Since the year 2000, more than 9.7 billion cumulative treatments have been delivered globally.
9.7 billion.
Billion. With a B. Thanks to that effort, the global incidence of this disease has plummeted by 74%, dropping from roughly 199 million cases in 2000 to just over 51 million in 2018. Today, 871 million people who were previously at risk no longer even require preventive chemotherapy.
So what does this all mean? It means you are looking at one of the most successful, yet vastly underreported, global public health triumphs of our lifetime. 21 countries have eliminated lymphatic filariasis entirely as a public health problem. 14 others are currently under strict surveillance, waiting to confirm total elimination. Economically, this campaign has prevented an estimated $100.5 billion in economic loss for some of the world's most vulnerable populations.
It is a triumph of modern medicine, but we do have to be realistic about the setbacks. The COVID-19 pandemic caused severe cascading disruptions to these mass drug administration programs.
Right, because supply chains stopped, clinics closed.
Exactly. And when you miss annual treatments for an entire country, it leaves populations incredibly vulnerable to a resurgence because the parasite's multi-year life cycle has a chance to restart.
If we've successfully eliminated this in 21 countries, what is standing in the way of wiping it off the face of the earth completely? What does the end game look like?
Well, the WHO has extended its official elimination goal to 2030, aiming for 80% of the 71 endemic countries to eliminate it as a public health concern. But researchers are racing to solve two massive hurdles.
Which are?
First, overcoming the indirect effects of those COVID-19 delays we just mentioned. And second, they are urgently trying to figure out how to safely achieve elimination in those specific regions of Africa where deadly Loa co-infections make traditional mass drug administration impossible.
Because of the brain swelling risk.
Right. We need entirely new, safer drug regimens or highly specific diagnostic strategies to clear those remaining strongholds without, killing the patients in the process.
I want to leave you with a chilling hypothetical to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We know that Wuchereria bancrofti is highly versatile. It is transmitted by very common mosquitoes like Culex and Aedes. As climate change rapidly alters our environment, expanding mosquito habitats worldwide and pushing these vectors into completely new, geographically naive regions, is there a risk that these thread-like villains could be carried into entirely unprepared global populations before we hit that 2030 elimination goal?
That is the grim reality of infectious disease. It is never just a local problem. We are in a constant high-stakes race against the clock and against the mosquito to finish the job. If we give this parasite time and if we give it new territory, its biology ensures that it will exploit them.
Stay informed. Stay prepared. This has been Outbreak Brief.